you can have 2 sessions for $9.97, or you can have 4 sessions for $11.97.
Got it. So it's like obvious choice. Why would I not do that?
So you use one to position the one that you want them to take, and then you have a downsell. So really you end up with 2 packages and 1 positioning.
See what I'm saying, man? I'm getting lessons right here in front of you guys without even knowing it. I love it.
Welcome to Processing Purpose, a business and lifestyle podcast committed to having honest conversations about the stuff in our lives that is often suppressed, ignored, or overlooked. We are 2 brothers from very different backgrounds, but with one common goal. From entrepreneurship to relationships, from hobbies to house projects, nothing is off limits as we process becoming the best version of ourselves in business and life. And on that note, we're back. No one's going to get what just happened.
No, they won't, but it was awesome. Just so you know, it was awesome. But I am glad to be here with you today. I know it's been a couple weeks. Actually, sometimes
we say that every time. It's been a couple weeks.
But sometimes we'll do consecutive, episodes, or sometimes it'll be a long stretch, and there's a lot to cover there. But I felt like you and I have had a pretty good rhythm with one another, keeping up in each other's lives, what's going on with one another, and all that. We're obviously going to talk topically what we're going to go over today, but anything else you want to bring up or go over before we launch right into topic stuff?
No, I mean, you said, keeping up and checking in with each other's lives. That's kind of what this is going to be.
Yeah.
So this is going to be kind of a next edition of kind of that, startup. Watch us as we start things up. Get things going. What do we call it? Man, I botched that one.
Have an idea, or we had a few in a row actually on the first season of our podcast talking about how you have an idea, what to do with that idea, what to do next, how to get a business off the ground, how to get things going.
Yeah.
But today we're going to circle back in season 2 of what we're doing now, right? We're going to revisit some of those things we talked about, what's happening now in our lives, maybe what we've reframed.
Well, a couple months ago, too, we had an edition of it, too, of
a little refresh.
Yeah, it was talking about how I was getting the new project off the ground with the STR stuff.
Yeah,
so
very true.
We went through that, so we can revisit that as well. And you've got some new things getting started up, and I've got some things even since then. So
right,
lots. So where do we?
So any entrepreneur out there, anybody with ambition, are always looking to do the next thing. Luke and I are addicted to it. We can't stop. But sometimes there's pivot points. Sometimes there's moments of stopping and reflecting and or analyzing the situation, whether or not it's worth your time anymore. We're going to talk through a few of those things because I think it's all honest and relevant.
Yeah.
For us, for you guys, most likely. You guys are probably in some iteration of that in your lives. So let's kick it off. Where are you at with business? Where are you at with your startups? Where are you at with growing these things?
So step-by-step startup. That's what it was. That's what I was trying to come up with.
Nailed it.
Got it. Put that back in the front. So the episode starts right now. So last time we talked, I was starting a new project in the short-term rental space. I don't remember how specific I got. I know I was talking about like what my first steps were. We talked about pricing, we talked about messaging, we talked about getting things going, and like everything was TBD. Well, things kind of blew up, and I don't mean necessarily in a positive way. Like things exploded. It wasn't necessarily negative though either.
With STR stuff or something?
Life.
Got it. All right.
As life happens.
Yeah.
So almost immediately in the wake of that, my assistant, who's really my number 2, went on maternity leave. They had another baby. Congrats to them. It's wonderful. But she took 3 months off. And when essentially your chief of staff is gone for 3 months, that's a lot of workload that needed to be absorbed.
Right.
And 3 months isn't a long enough window to really train somebody else to fill that, to train a temp. So you just kind of have to wear it. So I went from working, let's be realistic, a full day for me was 8 hours. Like a solid good work day for me is 6. I do 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon is how I break it up. I went from that to 12 and 15-hour days.
That's capacity overload.
Oh, it's full max burnout. And
Yeah.
that was 6.5 days a week.
And this is already in a lane that you're fairly frustrated with already, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, you're where you wanted to be with it and you're dealing with these things. It's kind of a different attitude around all of it. But when you're like, I don't necessarily want this right now, and then I've added all this extra responsibility to it, stressful, man. I just want to recognize that. I'm not necessarily saying we have to dwell on that, but that is, and it's okay to say that and feel that, you know.
It's real.
Yeah.
Because it's tough to get enthusiastic about something that you're not enthusiastic about, right? That you're like, man, this season is ending. This chapter is ending. And to have to double down on it when you know it's coming to a close. Now, that's a relative term, meaning I don't know that it's coming to a close this month or a year or two from now, but that season is ending.
Right.
And so when you're forced to be like, and it's not, and you're not only in it, but now you're having to relearn all the stuff that you've delegated that you haven't done in 5 years. It's like, okay, here we go. And then 2 months into that, I had one of my managers put in a short-term resignation.
Right.
And so I went from normal work to a heavy workload. Probably when my assistant left, I probably went to 10 to 12 hours. And then once a manager left, I went, I physically don't have enough hours in the day.
Right.
And so we were putting in 15-hour days, regularly in at 5 and regularly 8 or 9 p.m. Like
grinding. I mean,
6 days a week and hours on the 7th.
Here's a question for you. How do you unstick? How do you get yourself out of a sticky situation that you've created? That's an interesting paradox. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We talk about pivoting all the time.
What do you mean I created it, though?
No, I mean the business, right? Like, let's just say, like, we're in a lane, we're building a business, we realize we're kind of stuck in this situation, like, but we've created it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying that's an interesting paradox. How does that resonate?
Well, it's easy to get into business. It's hard to get out of business.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good way to say it.
I've said that before. And I think it's important on the front end. And it's easy to say this, but I think it's important on the front end to make sure that you're excited about it.
Right.
And it wasn't that I was excited about this until COVID and the whole business changed.
Right.
And so I'm not as excited about it post COVID. It just the entire industry has been overhauled, which, you know, every industry needs to be overhauled. And it's just not fun anymore. So because of that, because of my workload, I had to, and this is an interesting like segue into like another point of this. I had to decide what I say no to. I just didn't have enough bandwidth to do everything.
Yeah.
And I had to decide, all right, what is the highest priority now? Right? I had this idea. I was excited about it. I see that there's some promise there. I can talk about what some of those results were, but ultimately I had to turn everything off and shelve it.
What were those priorities, or how do you know the bigger priorities over the others? I guess how do you discern the two when you're dealing with that much stuff
in the midst of chaos? Honestly, and I'm not saying this is right, but for me, it was whatever was the loudest.
Glaring.
And it's not always the best way to make decisions. Like sometimes, you know, there's the urgent versus the important. Right. And not always is the urgent more important than the important.
Right.
It just seems to be the loudest. But when you're down 2 staff and you're just spinning plates, you're essentially just going, how can I drop as few balls as possible? Balls are going to get dropped. In fact, in one of those episodes, we talked about one of me losing a $50,000 client sometime in the last several months. We talked about that.
Yeah.
That was a result of just trying to do too much. Like I physically couldn't get to everything.
Right.
And so a lot of systems and processes has carried us through because we've systematized a lot, but a lot of stuff that was new and fresh and new initiatives all got tabled.
I think what you're saying is really relevant to a lot of people out there that are having staffing issues.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yours was circumstantial, but I mean, people can't even find talent. They can't find help. So they're constantly in the business because they just don't have anybody else to help run the business. And so that's a real challenge right now.
Yeah. And, in those situations, you must figure out what can be shelved so that you can bring other people in. You have to, otherwise you're stuck. For me, I knew my assistant was coming back, right? I knew that my number 2 was coming back. And so I can grind.
Yeah.
When a manager steps down though, that's a different deal. Cause now you're talking about interviews, you're talking about hiring, you're talking about training. And it was like, whoa, like I don't have the capacity for this. I had to go to my wife who had been talking about, gosh, she's an amazing mom, an amazing stay-at-home mom. But the kids are in school now. And so, our youngest is in kindergarten or just finished kindergarten. We're summertime now, but she's been like, okay, like I think it's time for me to do something. And so there's been a lot of talk over the last 6 months about what should I do? Where should I go? And I essentially went to her and said, so you've been talking about wanting to do something. Want to work for me? And
I think she's been wanting to too. That's just my guess. I think she's wanted to work with you again.
She's talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
And a side note, it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome to hear.
It's been super refreshing.
Nice, man. And
which I honestly didn't expect.
Well, listen, man, like the thing is us as dads, husbands, entrepreneurs, like we wear the provider and protector hat all the time. We always want to be the guy, right? That leads the charge. But man, we need help. We need help. And our wives are incredible people and they're always willing to do so. But the moment we realize, wow, this can work, this can be symbiotic, holy smokes, man. That's cool. That's really cool to hear.
And it really bailed me out too, because I could be like, grab a chair, grab your computer, just sit next to me at my desk. Like, we'll work through the things that I need you to do and we'll train you on the fly because I'm also doing 2 jobs already and I can't do a third.
Right.
So I'll do this. Questions are going to come up. Let's handle it. We'll talk through it. So she just sat there and I trained her on the fly while I was trying to do everything else. And
you're a pretty quick learner too.
She is. It was the only way it could have worked.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would have had to have called Claudia and been like, so I know you're on maternity leave, but I'm going to have to end it short. I couldn't have done it.
Yeah. Like this thing's
physically couldn't have done it.
This thing's just going to start going and you don't want that to happen.
Yeah. So it was a huge blessing. And then the silver lining in it is, in fact, I remember in the early, like the first couple weeks where we're both trying to go, how's this going to go? Because we worked together at Degree 33.
Right.
And that wasn't as healthy.
But because you didn't have defined roles.
Well, we were both there from day 0, right? And so it was just we operated whatever needed to be done. Let's just do it. And so it was like, you do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. Like, let's just run.
Right. And
then once you kind of get up to the scaling point, someone has to report to the other. And there was conflict there.
Yeah.
Because we had set this pattern of like, we're both in charge.
Right.
And it was wearing towards the end of that chapter.
Yeah.
But she's coming in a very like clear guardrails. Here's what you do. And if there's nothing on your task list within your lane, go be in your garden. Like, you don't need to do anything else.
Right.
This is all you're doing.
Yeah.
And so I remember even in the first couple of weeks as we were kind of figuring out, like, is this going to work? I remember laying on my floor and it was evening and we were just talking and I was laying on the floor and I go, for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to going to work tomorrow because you're going to be there.
And duly, not a bad way to affirm your wife and get some points. You know what I mean?
She was very appreciative.
How could you not be?
Yeah.
You know, to be accepted and wanted. Come on. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
So there's been a swirl of just chaos for us for a bit here.
Right. Along with other family, kid stuff, and everything else that goes along with your lifestyle.
Yep. And so some stuff that I was excited about and still am and will revisit had to get totally shelved. We made some progress there. We can talk about what that progress is and what needs to happen next. But, where are you at in kind of this startup? We've talked about it multiple times. You're getting some coaching off the ground. Like, you were working with practice clients this month of June. How's that going?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's been going awesome. I joked with you this morning that I swear I got a sign on my head or something that just says unload on this guy, because people love just sharing their life stories with me. And I feel equally confused and honored by it because I'm like, I appreciate it. Like, feel so honored that you're willing to go there with me when you don't really know me. But I also am trying to navigate how to be my best self through that for those people as well. So all that to say is it's just naturally kind of occurring. And as I reflect on my life, this has kind of always happened. And I'm not saying because I have, I just think I have an approachable personality. I think that's where it's at. But with coaching, I've been in coach training for the last, 3 months now, going on the 4th month, which has been really good. Incredible trainers, awesome classmates. Actually, I got about 12 people in my class. It can vary from week to week depending on who shows up, but we get to do practice pods, which are basically practice coaching with one another. And that's just been really rich, but more so that they're helping us start to build the business, right? And start to think about clients. And so they tasked us to go find practice clients. So I put out a post on social media, ended up with 4 very quickly, and been working with them through the month of June.
That's great.
I have one more session with a gal that couldn't make last week, this coming week, to kind of finish up our conversation. But it's been really, really rich. I am realizing, though, that as I start to implement my business into my day-to-day calendar, that anyway, we talked about it a little bit, but people so far don't feel like they're respecting my time very much. And there could be a shift there once I start charging. These are practice clients, not charging for these. So it's easy to move that around.
Yeah.
So I'll figure out how to create some policies around that sort of thing. But right now, the stage I'm in is I'm trying to figure out the pricing model. That's where I'm a little bit stuck. And we talked about the fact that most people don't charge enough. My hang up is where you're in the business coaching lane, I'm in the life coaching lane, which both have their value in different ways. And I don't want to undervalue myself, but I'm realizing that I'm having a hard time, maybe not justifying, that's not the right word, but I'm having a hard time maybe rationalizing why I should price what I'm pricing, how I'm pricing what I'm pricing, if that makes sense.
Do you feel like that's because the quantification of the coaching isn't as material?
Yeah,
It's
or
more
easily
emotional
measured.
or- yeah. Quantifiable.
Totally. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like
That makes sense.
someone with a business coach goes, well, yeah, I'm willing to pay you X because you're making me X more.
Right.
And this is helping me push my business in the right direction. Now, quality measures, a lot of people go, man, I feel better. My life is going better. Like there's a lot of value there. But what price do you put on that?
Yeah.
I don't know yet. And so where I'm at, I'm going to throw some numbers at you just to see if it lands and see if it lands with anybody. Just because this is where my mind's been at. But I've been considering creating kind of a tiered package.
Okay.
There may be people out there. I think it's rare, but I think there may be people out there that say, "Hey, man, I need 1 hour with you. I need to just get something off my chest, go through a conversation with you to see if I can have some perspective shifts to make some better decisions." That may happen. It may not happen. But my thought there was $397. Okay. So for 1 hour of my time, about $400, which I know seems steep, but I got to make sure that I'm creating a package that gets more and more attractive as you stay with me. So the next iteration is 2 45-minute sessions for, I believe I had it down for $597. So $600 for 2 45-minute sessions per month is what you'd get. So we'd stagger those out every couple weeks. The third package is, and I'm wondering if I'm making too many packages too, so be honest about that. But the third package is 4 30-minute sessions a month for $800, so $797. The last package is the wanting to get people on a monthly kind of subscription base, where I was thinking about doing 4 45-minute sessions for $1,000 a month. How does that land? Does that feel like not enough?
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of session or a lot of options.
Okay.
It's too many options.
Okay. Then I thought about scaling it back to 2 options.
Okay.
But I don't know what
you
that
don't
is
even
yet.
have to have your single session as an option.
Okay.
Okay. So that you
Just
don't
take that out.
You don't have to have that. Like if somebody, you can talk about this and they're like, well, if I'm not sure I need you every single month or whatever. Like, I don't know if that's going to be the language they'll use, but you can be like, well, look, I'll sit down and talk with you and it can be just like an asterisk side note that's like $500. Let's sit down and talk. Right. Or whatever it is. Right.
Right.
And you can go that route. So it doesn't have to be an option that you give them.
Right. It's out of your back pocket kind of a thing if it comes up.
It's more of just because I don't think that's going to be the norm, to be honest.
Okay.
I think that's going to be the exception.
Okay.
And pricing theory, so you're going to have 3 different tiers, no more than 3.
Okay.
And when it comes to pricing, the way you want to think about it is use one of them to position the one you want them to take.
Got it.
Okay, so you might have 2 sessions for $9.97. Not really, and it just depends on which one you actually want, like how involved you want it. Maybe your 2 times a month is the one you want people to take. But you can have 2 sessions for $9.97, or you can have 4 sessions for $11.97.
Got it. So it's like obvious choice. Why would I not do that?
So you use one to position the one that you want them to take, and then you have a downsell. So really you end up with 2 packages and 1 positioning.
See what I'm saying, man? I'm getting lessons right here in front of you guys without even knowing it. I love it. But this is why it's so good to talk through these things, because I'm kind of stuck on it. I'm going, I want to start building out the website and everything else, and I'm going, I got to get my pricing model figured out. So this is really helpful.
Yeah.
So use one to position the other. What was the downsell part of that?
And then you have 2 really that people will take. And you see this often in the SaaS world. Like if you go to sign up for any software, you'll see you have the standard, the pro, and the elite, right? We'll just call it that. And it always has pro and most popular.
Right.
And the elite will position the pro, and the downsell will be the standard for beginners.
Got it.
And so it's kind of positioned like that. So maybe that's how many sessions a month it is. Maybe that's how long the sessions are. You can structure that differently. But
okay,
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm just, I think there's certainly going to be, I think I'm anticipating sticker shock for some people, like, whoa, dude, you're charging as much as an attorney or whatever else. And it's like, yeah, but it's not for them. And I got to remember that, right?
Yep.
This is going to be for the people that find value in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it with them. And that's all, right? And, I think what happens is sometimes we think our tribe is our only opportunity. And it's not, right? Like
No.
you're actually, all your opportunities are more so outside of your tribe than inside your tribe. But I want to make sure I'm charging enough for my time. That's the bigger concern for me, is I know that in the real estate lane, if I go put my time that direction, I can make a certain amount of money, and I don't want to lose opportunity costs there. Yep. So anyways, thank you for walking me through that. But that's where I'm at currently. I bought the domain name for the website, which I love it. I think everyone else is going to think it's hopefully endearing, but it's CoachGav.com.
Coach Gav.
You know what I'm saying?
Love it.
I have a lot of people that I have endearing relationships with. They all call me Gav, all of them. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go with Gav.
I like it.
And also Coach Gavin was taken. So
hey, there you go.
And anything that, my whole thing is legacy coaching, right? Helping people embrace their true identity and cast a vision for their future. Everything legacy based was taken. I mean, you can't find any single domain with a legacy in it that's not already taken. So that's that. That's where I'm currently at. Real estate company still moving in the direction we've discussed before. So nothing really has changed there. Super excited about that. And then that's it. That's about it right now. I've really actually, let me talk about this. I've decided to actually pull back on some of the endeavors, much like you.
Yeah.
Right. And these endeavors are more conversational than they are executionary. But I've decided to, because I'm like, you know what? I keep reminding myself of what Ron Swanson on Parks and Rec says, and that's don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing.
Yeah.
Right? And yes, I'm doing coaching and real estate, but the truth is I can spread myself too thin very quickly, very easily, and it just doesn't need to happen that way at all. Hopefully I'm getting a little wiser there, but I had a few other projects I was working on with other community members trying to get stuff launched. Remember Stump Jumper and all that, which still may come to fruition down the line. But right now, I emailed him yesterday and said, hey, I'm going to let you know my capacity is max. I just really want to stay ultra focused on what I'm doing, try to grow those things and not get too diluted with everything else. And he really appreciated that. And who wouldn't, right? That honesty. And I just want to also acknowledge that by pausing something, that's nothing but pausing.
Yeah.
That is it. It's just a shelf it. We're going to revisit this later. I got to get to what I need to get to. That's totally okay and normal. Don't feel like you're failing because you paused something, right? Or don't feel like I'm never going to get back to that. Yeah, you will. You will. This time will pass. We'll get through this. Going to be okay.
Yeah. At the same time, I want to caution people against, like, when I get my ducks in a row, I'm going to start this.
Yes.
Because
yes,
we've talked about the pendulum swinging. Like, that's too far. Ducks aren't going to get in a row.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. Like, there's not going to be a perfect time to start.
Do you feel like at this point, I'm kind of go to the dad lane. At this point, raising your kids, do you feel like your kids are too quick to act or too analytical or both, depending on the kid?
It depends on the kid, fully. Like, Van is very analytical. He's like, gosh, I want to think through this. I want to take this step. Does this make sense? And then it's not that he doesn't have a hard time taking action, but he's just very analytical. Nora's kind of in the middle. She's my middle child. I don't know if that's a typical middle child. She'll think about it. She'll overthink it. And then when it's time to go, she just goes. Yeah. And Koa just goes. He doesn't think about anything.
Yeah, him and I click.
Yeah.
We just do.
It's hard to not click with Koa, which it's hard not to click with you. Like there's some
thank you.
There's some personality types that are just, I mean, the word we use is charismatic, right?
Sure.
So
and that kid has a smile. I mean, nobody know. I mean, you guys don't know Koa. Some of you do. That kid has a smile that is worth literally millions of dollars. He lights the room up. The moment he walks in and those little dimples go up, it's like, dude, who is this kid?
He's got to smile constantly.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty rad.
It just depends.
Yeah.
It just depends.
How do you coach them through some of that? Do you find yourself going, hey, don't overanalyze this situation, or hey, slow down a little bit, don't act too quickly?
Not with Koa. I'm not trying to get him to slow down. He's not.
No.
He's not at an. He's kindergartner, so he's not at an age where you're trying to ration and rationalize. Trying to have those conversations at this point. It's just like, yeah, buddy, let's run, let's go.
Yeah.
Van, though, being 11, going on 25, he's.
Yeah. Yep. That is exactly right.
He's. I have to We've thought enough about it. Go.
Yeah.
I have to keep pushing him.
Is she more of an act and go, or
yes.
is she more? Yeah, she's less of a sit around and think about it.
It's one of those. Your strength is also your greatest weakness.
Right.
Like her strength is like work. Like what needs to be done, let's get it done.
She just does.
She just goes.
Yeah, she really does.
And it's also her weakness because she'll do things. She'll do more than she has to do if she'd have just taken a step back and surveyed it before taking action. She'd have been able to go, okay, that doesn't need to be done. This has to be done first.
Right.
Versus, oh, I should have done that first, and now I made a mess. And
sounds super familiar.
Yeah.
Really familiar.
She goes, and all respect, and it's a huge asset for her. Like if you need something done, she'll get it done.
Yeah.
And I have to buffer that with like, okay, wait. If you do that today, you're going to have to do it again because of that.
Her and I also, I think when we get into that mode, I would argue she's a much harder worker than I, for sure. Burnout is real too. Physical burnout, not necessarily mental or emotional, sometimes emotional, but the physical burnout, I feel like Holly doesn't even realize what she's putting her body through on a daily basis when she's working her ass off like that.
No,
sometimes.
she doesn't until it's over.
Yeah, and
she's like,
oh.
I did too much today. I'm
Yeah.
like, you think?
Yeah, she's a machine. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's goods, there's bads.
Yep. And let me shift back to STR stuff because we've shelved it, but I want you to also cover what you believe are the next steps once you do re-engage.
Yeah. So last time we were talking about price testing, we were talking about message testing. So we've figured out some of the baselines of the messaging, and we realized that our pricing model isn't going to work. Okay. So it was never the intent was never to like identify the pricing out of the chute. It was to just let pricing be whatever it is and try and identify what messaging is going to get most people to respond.
Got it.
But now that we've kind of figured that initial piece out, now I must go back and go, okay, is this going to be a viable model? Because the messaging is there, the action's there, but now can I turn it into something that will make money and pay for its own advertising and create future opportunity with additional upsells and additional products and things like that. And so the next step, once we get things rolling again, is I'm going to have to like write out like what pricing based on what I know it's going to cost me to get a lead and then a sale. What's the pricing need to be now to make sure that it pays for the advertising? Because that's my first goal, is to get the advertising to self-liquidate, which means that it pays for itself, so that everything that you do after you get that customer is profit.
Right.
And so what we started with pricing won't do that. And I didn't know what it was going to cost me to get a sale and things like that. And so you just you stab at it and then you work the process backwards after you figured it out. So it's like, okay, now I know what this is going to cost me. Now I have to go back and go, all right, let's raise the price on the front end product to this. Let's raise the upsell to that. Does it still convert at the same percentages? And is my sale cost still the same? Or does that now change my sale cost? Because your price will change your sale cost because it changes how many people buy. Right. So those are going to be opposing forces on some level.
Right.
Or did the change in pricing not affect conversion at all? Well, then now I figured out where that pricing needs to be. Right. So it's just kind of a testing game of figuring out what it needs to be. So that'll be the next step, is can I create a pricing model that pays for the advertising? And when we turn everything back on, which will probably be, my assistant's not back. She's back part-time now. Holly's nearly up to speed. So my time now has gone from breakneck back down now to probably 10 hours a day. So that's better. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. That's manageable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And being able to take both weekend days off. So I'm putting in about 50 hours a week right now, which is manageable. It's still more than I work optimally. Like I can't work optimally that much. And often people are like, I put in this many hours a week. Well, being in the office that many hours and working that many hours are two different conversations.
Usually 50% of the time you're actually working.
Yeah. So I'm working 10 hours a day right now, and that's just I can't work that much, not effectively. So I got to wait till my assistant comes back full time, and I get to a point where it's like, okay, the machine is going again, and now I can start to focus on that. So I think it's probably going to be another couple months, realistically,
before you actually start to feel it humming the way it needs to be humming.
Yeah, because something else that I didn't talk about in the midst of all that, which was a major factor. So my assistant went on maternity leave. I had a manager quit, and we did a full CRM tech stack swap that was happening at the same time. And that was just unfortunate timing that happened, that it all lined up together. But we did a full CRM tech stack swap. So from about 8 different applications that was in our tech stack to navigate our client fulfillment, client acquisitions, all of that, down to 2.
There was something that occurred. You already covered this in another episode. Just to remind everybody, though, there was something that occurred that caused you to expedite swapping out that tech stack versus wait. I feel like you and your assistant talked about waiting, and then you were like, nope, this is happening. Let's just do it now.
Yeah.
What was that?
There was a couple of things happening. Specifically, I don't know what would have prompted that conversation, but I know one of the things for sure was, and this is super technical, but the way SMS is being regulated, the way text messages is being regulated. So there's this whole thing, 10DLC. It's a regulation passed down by the FCC to regulate and make sure that you do have permission to send text messages to people.
Right.
And then your phone numbers get verified, and like there's this whole process that you have to go through verification and A2P, and super technical. And we were going to have to do it twice if we stayed on our current platforms.
Got it.
So we were going to have to go through the entire process of getting verified and approved, which is a bit laborious, only to then switch and turn around and do it in 6 more months.
Right.
And so it was like, let's just go.
Can you describe a tech stack just for people that don't know what a tech stack is?
Yeah. So a tech stack is what technology in your business are you using to execute on the things that you need to execute on?
Perfect.
And some of them are going to be interrelated, like to do this step, I have to have this step. So to run my CRM effectively, I have to have this database management tool,
like a Zapier or something like
right?
that.
And they communicate with each other. But then over here for email, I have to have this connector from my CRM to send email. And so I have to have an API technology in between the two to communicate, right? And so you end up with kind of this Frankenstein tech stack because you don't need it all at the beginning. And
Right.
then you just start bolting things on, and pretty soon it's like, this is a mess. And so that's where we found ourselves. So we had to start bringing things into softwares that were designed to do it instead of just bolting everything on.
And you're in the tech space. I think most people don't realize, and we're in real estate, marketing is part of what we do, but tech's in everything.
Yeah.
And most people, I think when they go into business, they don't really take time to realize how much a tech stack's going to cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hefty expense on your P&L for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we were spending, and we're not a big company. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we're a true small business. But even in our small business, we were spending $2,000 a month on technology.
Just to run the operations you need to run.
Mm-hmm.
Most people just don't consider that. So consider that. Take time, really ask the questions around technologies, what you need for your business. Sometimes you use something and you realize, this wasn't as necessary as I thought it was, and that's okay. It's a green light, red light philosophy.
Yep.
But anyways, I just wanted to take time to describe that because we say stuff on here, and I think some people are like, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah. Or
so
Googling and going to ChatGPT. Can you explain to me what a tech stack is?
I know. And then the other thing I noticed you said, and I think is really important to bring up, is that when you hit a wall in your testing, you said, then I started to walk it back.
Yeah.
Step by step. That is such an important piece of advice that I think most people don't realize. Don't start over, right? Yes, it's a form of starting over, but don't just drop everything and start from scratch. Maybe it's necessary, but more times than not, if you just walk it back a step or two, you can fix that one step and then it goes or whatever.
And I want to be clear about something too, because I make it sound like, oh yeah, this is part of the process.
Right.
But the reality of the emotion of that moment, I felt like I failed. Bad expectations on my part, but I went into it like, I'm totally going to figure this out. I know how this goes. I'm good enough to figure this out. And I assumed that I'd probably figure it out of the gate, which is a terrible assumption. And I don't even, it's laughable, right? It's laughable. And yet when we ran into roadblocks where it's like, man, this isn't going to ROI like I thought it would be. Like, gosh, like I for some reason, instead of just being like, of course it didn't. Now let's figure out what it needs to be. It was like, like I didn't figure it out. And it was like defeating for a period of time.
Sure.
So just know that is somewhat normal. Like, even though maybe intellectually, you know, like this is going to be a step-by-step process and there's going to be some steps that go backwards. When you're taking those steps backwards, it feels like you failed. And it's not true.
Yeah. But it's okay to feel those feelings and don't dwell on them, right? Go for a walk, snap out of it as quickly as you can, but it's okay to feel that too.
Yeah.
You know, it just kind of comes with the process, but good on you for mentioning that. I think most people don't realize that when they're actually going through something really hard, they're growing, they're getting smarter, they're getting stronger, and that's uncomfortable, but the outcome of all of that is actually so much more fruitful than you ever anticipate. You just don't get to see it when you're going through the process.
Yeah.
It just is not part of it.
All right, we're gonna take a bit of a pivot here, unless you
Okay.
had something that you're wanting to talk
No,
about.
no.
Okay,
no.
so we're gonna shift this, and so I said, there's never a perfect time. You're not gonna get your ducks in a row, and sometimes a moment will come when you must take action because it's the moment that it needs to happen.
Right.
The opportunity's in front of you, and you either take the action and grab it, or that moment passes.
Yep.
So in the midst of all of this, and I alluded to it last episode, in the midst of all of this, the opportunity came up for us to buy a hotel.
Yeah.
Which I've never bought a hotel before.
Now, let me take one step back though. Opportunity might be a misnomer. You're creating the opportunity, right? So I want to make that clear. It's not like someone just showed up and said, "Hey, do you want to buy a hotel today?"
Right.
You've been actively real estate is not new for you,
No.
right? Like to say you're a new real estate guy is actually not true. You've been researching, studying, probably know more in-depth facts about real estate than most people do because you've taken that time to do so. So you are pretty well versed.
I mean, we've put offers in on a lot of property over the last 4 or 5 years.
You know the process. Yep.
Brooks is probably incredibly frustrated with how much time we've put offers in on property and haven't followed through.
Well, your family and listen, we're in the game for the long run. We know
I
that
appreciate that.
we
Well, your family, so we'll deal with you.
No, but we're always going to be, willing to do 20% extra for family than we are for anybody else. It's just how life works.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I just want to make it clear that you worked your ass off to put yourself in a position to even recognize the opportunity, which is a big deal to know.
Yeah. So we got presented with, through the process of research and learning, and like my real estate kind of arc has been from short-term rentals to, okay, let's build a short-term rental portfolio, to, okay, what if we created micro resorts and it was like a short-term rental complex, to, well, what if we went boutique hotel? Okay, so that's kind of been the arc of things. And there was an opportunity that came up to get into a boutique hotel here in town.
I have a skyscraper if you want to get into that.
Okay, I don't see the end of that arc. So maybe.
I'm just kidding.
Maybe. Also some oceanfront in Arizona. And so in the midst of all of this, literally about, maybe a month ago?
Mm-hmm.
So in the midst of me training Holly, my assistant still being out, shelving things because I don't have enough time, the opportunity came along that was like, oh, by the way, do you want to buy a hotel?
And this is what you mean by making the decision when the opportunity is right in front of you.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like, we need to chase this opportunity down. And I don't know what that looks like. And here's kind of dovetailing with navigating through the fog, like we talked about last episode.
Right.
This truly is an experience that's different than anything that I've done prior to this point. Because you can study short-term rentals, you can put offers, you can run them, you can run more than one. All of those things are true. But now when you start arcing into true commercial real estate with a business and staff that's already in motion, the experience is much different. The expectation is much different. The order of operations is much different. So I have been trying to educate myself and bumble through this process without frustrating you guys, without frustrating the seller, without frustrating, my banker and everybody else. And it's been very uncomfortable. It's been incredibly uncomfortable. And you just kind of go, I hope that this next call leads me to know what the next call needs to be, because I don't know how this works out.
More times than not, it turns into 3 more calls.
Which is when you don't know what to do, which is great.
Yeah, you're learning. And
because it's like, okay, well, I guess this will be the next person that that I need to call. And so, and you don't know what you don't know. So, I'm researching, I'm going to have to bring on investors on this. So I'm researching syndication. I'm researching, waterfalls and equity shares and preferred returns and like all of these things that I knew nothing about. And even as I say them, the vast majority of the people I'm talking that are hearing this are like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Right. Neither did I 30 days ago. And so I dug in. I took my time, whenever I had it, while I was trying to do everything else. When I'm like spent on Cascade and I'm like, my brain's just melted. I can't do anything more here. I would pivot to something that was research, and I would try and read another article and listen to another podcast and read another book, figure out how you raise money and what goes into an investor deck, and writing a business plan for the first time in my life. I kid you not, for the first time in my life, writing a business plan. I've never written a business plan.
We've often talked about those plans change in a week.
I've bootstrapped everything. So, I haven't had to bring on any investors. Like, I've just figured it out as I go. But, when you start doing these things and need to bring on investor money and need to bring on a bank for lending and things like that, they want to make sure that you understand what's going to happen. Yeah. They don't like the fly by the seat of your pants thing. So,
what?
Right, yeah, writing all those things and, figuring out the calls and, do you get the legal entity in place before you get the financing in place? At what point does the seller work with you and treat you legitimate? That's been a whole arc. And it's been a mess.
Yeah, it's been a very complicated, and we talked through some of what we believe could be solutions in all of that. But it's wild to me how many business owners, and I'm kind of poo-pooing on us right now. We all have pretty actually clear and reasonable expectations when we go to buy something. But yet when we go to sell something, we become a totally different person. So investors do this all the time. That person that owns the hotel, when they bought it, they're asking all the questions you're asking.
Of course.
But now they're going to sell, and they don't want to give any information. They're going to require this, that, and the other thing. And you got to give over your dog just to get, just to get a look at the P&L. It's wild. This is pretty consistent across the board that business owners act this way, and I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's beside the point, but
yeah. So in the midst of all of this, trying to educate myself on a relatively completely new pursuit. And I say relatively because you're right. I'm not new to the real estate side, but I've never bought a business. And this is, a big acquisition for me. Mm-hmm. And I've never gone down this route. So, how do I raise money? I don't know. What does that conversation need to look like? I don't know. Like, how much money can I raise? I don't know.
Yeah, I know the truth, and you know this, but investors are going to invest in you, not the project.
Yep.
Right.
But both have to align.
Yeah, it has to make sense. But I think I say you because I know people trust that you know the numbers, mm-hmm. right? And they're going to have to validate and verify that, right? Inspect what you expect. But you're a really trustworthy person in that lane. I'd guess most people trust you with financials more than they trust themselves. And so there's a lot of trust involved. But let me ask this question, actually. I don't know if I asked it. When you get this money, how is that going to land? Because it's one thing to say, I'm going to go get investors. Another thing when they're like, okay, here's the check. And you're like, oh, shit. Now I gotta do something with it, and now there's this pressure to pay them back and all that other stuff. How does that land? How are you kind of thinking about that stuff?
I mean, it adds a layer of stress.
Yeah.
Because it's not just me, and if I fail, then I hurt me. If I fail, this hurts multiple people.
Yeah.
And I'm really not concerned about it from a post-close standpoint. I'm like, I feel pretty confident that even if I miss the mark completely, like barring unforeseen, okay, barring another pandemic, barring natural disaster, barring
right,
okay,
uncontrollable situation, yeah,
barring those things, I feel pretty confident in the project that even if all of my projections are wrong, like it still turns out okay. It might not be as good as we had hoped, but it's still no one's going to lose in this deal.
Right.
So I feel good about that, but there still puts a level of stress on it that's like they're trusting you.
Yeah.
And I want to do right by people. Like I want them to feel good about doing business with me and being partners in this. So
Totally.
It does provide stress. I think it's probably a good stress, that keeps you focused and keeps you paying attention to what it is and what you need to be doing. And, I'm going to have to figure out how to run a hotel also, so,
Yeah.
and how to fit that into the life that already feels too full. So
Right.
I'm going to have to continue to find ways to say no. We started the episode with that, learning what to say no to. I'm going to have to do another round of that.
Right.
If we're able to close this thing. And let's be honest, you and I both know we're a long ways away from being able to close this thing right now.
Right.
Like there's a lot of things that have to go right.
Right.
For this to work. So right now it is a bit of pipe dreams is a big statement. It's not that, but it's far from a foregone conclusion.
It's an exciting, distant opportunity right now. That's probably how it feels.
And we're just trying to put the pieces in place and just see if we can get enough pieces in place that this thing falls together.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario for me is that I educate myself for the next round that I do this.
Right.
Right. And so that's the worst case scenario. But there's a lot of things that need to go right. And then when it comes down to actually getting your investors to write a check, that's not a foregone conclusion. Like they can give you a verbal, like, yeah, I'll give you a few $100,000. And then it's like, great, I need that few $100,000. Can you write that check to me today? They're like, well, let me move some money around. And it's like,
maybe not anymore. And
so that's going to be a whole nother thing, right? How much money do I need to have committed so that I actually end up with the amount that I need?
Right.
Is that going to be a 1-to-1? Hopefully it's not a 2-to-1. But, what's that going to be? So that's going to be a whole nother layer to this.
Is there any regulations around this, like SEC stuff or anything like that?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, now this is what's considered a private offering. So I'm not mandated that I have to do a private offering memorandum. But for my own legal protection, for the investor's legal protection, I'll be putting those things in place, all of the SEC requirements. If I was going to do a bigger offering, I'm not required to do those things, but I'm going to put them in place.
Gotcha.
So that everybody's on the same page. You
Yeah.
know what the risks are, you know what the downside is, you know what the upside is. There's no gray area here.
Right.
So, and this opportunity might pass.
Yeah.
But I feel like I need to take advantage of it now because it's in front of me.
Yeah.
And so that's exciting. And to be honest, very scary.
Yeah.
Like legitimately up at night scary. Like,
okay.
Like,
you haven't shared that.
Like, okay, like, man, can I really do this? Like there's a self-doubt that's involved in the process of like, whew, like,
which I think is healthy.
Yeah.
We've talked about that, right? Barbara Corcoran, I'm sure I've mentioned it a few times on here, but I love there's a gal putting on a pitch on Shark Tank, really confident, really good pitch, actually, extremely well executed. And she leaned in and she said, I'm not going to invest in you. She goes, you know why I'm not going to invest in you? You have no self-doubt.
Yeah.
Everybody up here has self-doubt, and you have none. That is scary to me. You are going to be a train wreck. I was like, whoa, I did not expect that to come. But it's always a refreshment to hear someone say what you're saying, because it makes me realize you're going to do great. Because of that, you're going to do great.
Yeah. And it's a shared experience because anybody starting anything, likely there's an element of fear.
Yeah.
Can I really do this? Like, am I good enough to do this? Can I pull this off? There's a lot of expectations, and how do I fit this into my life? And I mean, a hotel's a big word. It sounds like, from having a couple of houses to like, now you have a hotel. It's like, whoa, that's a leap.
Have you ever talked to a hotel owner?
Uh-huh.
And just ask them questions, kind of like, how'd you get into this? Like, how, not necessarily say they need to coach you through it, but.
Oh yeah, I'll be putting coaching in place also.
Awesome.
Because why? Why?
Just
Why
the way
would
you said that.
why would you try and do this on your own?
No,
Like,
the whole crumb is what's going to happen. You're
Like,
going to get the whole crumb.
I just yes. Am I going to pay $30,000 for coaching? I am. Absolutely, I am. But trying to do it on my own, what's that going to cost me in time, in stress, in money that I would spend inaccurately?
You'd waste that money quickly. Yeah. Do you plan to delegate most of your operations there, knowing that,
Long term.
Yeah.
Short term, no.
But you'd be in the business
Short
very
term,
much.
I need to, and this is just my personal philosophy, and it'll probably be just for the first one that we buy. See, I'm already setting it up that we're going to buy more than one.
Sounds like this might not be as overwhelming as you thought.
But I need to know how this business runs.
Yeah.
And so I need to know what the ins and outs, what are the things, the softwares, the people, what are the moving components, so that I can, one, hire what needs to be there and understand, if those people are already in place, what their job is. If they get ill, something happens, somebody needs to step in, that's me. So I need to know how the whole thing runs. So I'll be fully in operations for a period.
Yeah, smart. Actually, I shared earlier that was talking with the owner of Dutch Bros. Let me take it back, a franchise owner of Dutch Bros. And he was sharing with me that there was a good period of time that he just absolutely stepped back from the business. There were some personal reasons for that, but he totally stepped back from the business, kind of lost sight of operations and how things were going, really left it up to the regional manager, stopped inspecting what he expected, and finally went back into the business, right? Kind of got a new wave of motivation, whatever. Actually, circumstantially, went back into the business, and it was not being run the way he left it at all.
Yeah.
Like, we are not doing that. We are doing that. What are you guys doing? We went through this 12 times. Like, you know what I mean? So point is he put it back on track because he had the experience running the business since 1997 to go in and say, I've done this way more than you guys have done this. Don't tell me you know how to do it better. This is how we're doing it. This is why. Stop it. Whatever. Yep. And so you're right. It's so valuable to really fully understand how your business works so that at any point you have to step back into it, you know how to correct what needs to be corrected.
And I see owners do this often, the abdication versus delegation. Now, when you're buying something, that looks different, but when you're building something, people will abdicate instead of delegate. They are like, I don't know how to do social media. I'm going to hire you.
Yeah.
You go figure it out. That is a roadmap for missed expectations and failed pursuits. Now, there is a period of time where you have to hire people that are better than you.
Yeah.
And you bring people in that can do it better than you can. That's a fact. But be careful just hiring someone to do this or do that without you having any understanding of how that should go, because how do you know if it's working and it's not, or it's not? How do you know if they're doing the right things or they're not? Like,
I made that mistake. My first operations director that I hired, I didn't understand how all of these things were supposed to work. I didn't sit down side by side with him to put it all together. So shit went sideways really fast. And I didn't know how to keep control of it. Actually, I couldn't until I had somebody else come in and go, we're redoing all of this. And so you're right. You're absolutely right.
Totally. So I'll have to get in there and figure it out. And I'll assume I get like little things. I don't even know if there's a general manager there yet. Like, I haven't been able to get that level of information from the seller yet.
Very cagey.
And so there's a lot of things to figure out, a lot of things to work through. And, I don't know how many staff are there. I know what the payroll line is, but I don't know what that represents. I don't know if the owner's taking pay. I don't know any of that. And so we'll figure it out one step at a time. And to kind of dovetail it with our last conversation, I don't know how this plays out. Nor do I honestly know what the next step is. Oh, I know what the next step is right now.
Right.
But I don't know what the step after that is. I trust that once I take the next step, I'll figure that out. But I don't know how this actually goes.
I hope everybody listening to this episode really can appreciate Luke's transparency, honesty, vulnerability. Luke is one of the most personally successful and confident individuals I know.
Oh, thank you.
The fact that you're willing to even go there and share these things, it's on your heart and mind. Like, I hope it's really valuable to everyone listening in, because you may have these same thoughts and feelings, and you're not alone.
Yeah.
These are all normal thoughts and feelings. It's okay not to know what the next step is right now. In fact, sometimes I really believe God's going to reveal those things in his timing, and that's just a part of it. And we have to accept that and surrender to it. So I'm really grateful for you. I'm grateful for this conversation. I'm grateful for just all of it, man. All of it. I am.
Love you.
Love you too, man.
We're out.
Thank you for tuning in to Processing Purpose. We hope you grabbed a few gold nuggets to take one step forward in your journey of life and business. Please remember to like and subscribe our channel if you'd like to get more content to help you build and grow everything around you. Make today your best day. Today is day one.